All right, we are back on Takedown after taking a couple weeks off while Paul was on vacation. So, actually, Paul made me realize something. Originally, when I thought about doing this show, I was thinking audio only, and then we'll just cut up the clips for video. And then, even when we would sign off, Paul would still wave to the camera, even though the video wasn't going all the way. And I was like, you know what? Let's just also put the full video out there. So starting today with today's show, you will also be able to see the whole episode on video. And this is a much shorter listen than most of the shows on our network because we're kind of getting in and getting out. We got 3 topics, and then we're going to give our thoughts and we're going to move along. But I wanted to mention Scott E Wrestling put up a bonus show this morning for Joshi fans. It is already in the feed. You can check that out. Also, this weekend, Saturday night, Jeremy Finestone and myself are going to do the post-game show for night 1 of SummerSlam. May have a special guest, may not. It's all dependent on this person's time and whether they're actually going to the show or not. And then Sunday night, Keela and Scott Young will do their version of the wrap after SummerSlam night 2. So a lot of content this weekend. And Paul, welcome back. What's going on? I mean, you've been doing the Dynamite show, but welcome back to this show.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back. And man, I was on the road for like 11 days and it feels like a month, and like I mean, and the big topic we have today, I mean, it happened 4 days ago and it literally feels like it was at least 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like it's just
and you haven't had a chance to talk about it. So why don't you go in on it? And we are talking about the passing of Hulk Hogan. John LaRocca and I had our thoughts on the Fight Game podcast on F4W Online. I kind of went through a timeline beginning of when I became a fan of Hogan through kind of just today or when he had passed. And on Wrestling Observer, Dave and I talked about it. He had to write that story in like 14 hours or something like that, which is incredible. But that's Dave. And so now, you have mentioned many times that you did not get into wrestling before Hulk Hogan. You kind of came in a little bit before him and weren't even really that big of a fan of his.
Yeah, like it's weird because I grew up in an AWA town, and so my first memories of watching wrestling are like late 70s, and that's before Hogan. And then we actually moved to the West Coast in 1980, and we were there for 3 years. So it's like 80 to 83, and I have like no memories of watching wrestling when I was out there. So I know like it's possible we didn't even have a TV. Like our family was really poor at the time, and like I just don't really remember. And then when I came back, I guess Hogan was probably already out of the WW or out of the AWA, and like I remember seeing Rocky 3 and seeing Hulk Hogan, and as far as I know, that might have been like the first time I saw him. And then the next time I would have saw him would have been like Saturday Night's Main Event, and then when he was co-hosting Saturday Night Live, which I watched every week. And at the time, we didn't get the WWF, we got AWA, but once a month we would get this random wrestling show that would show up instead of Saturday Night Live, and it was weird. And so, but like the bottom line as far as Hogan was, for whatever reason, I just, I guess at the time I was like 13, 14, and I just didn't really gravitate to Hogan. I kind of liked the bad guys more. Like I liked Heenan from the AWA, and I liked Jesse, and I liked Roddy. And so like when Roddy was like that, remember that Andre the Giant thing? I even liked Andre.
Yeah.
So it was like I cheered when Andre beat Hogan, like for the title, like so I was like kind of a weird fan. And it wasn't really until like the NWO when I got into Hogan. And then again when he came back to the WWF/E, I can't remember what it was at the time, in like 2002, I was into him then, just the nostalgia thing. I never like disliked him like tremendously. I just was never really into him for whatever reason. I kind of always liked the faster paced action guys, and I think I would have liked him in the AWA, and I really think I would have liked him in Japan from what I've gone back and watched. But I also like I'm well aware of the history, and obviously you can you know, what's happened since he wrestled, like that's obviously tarnished his legacy. I wonder how much people even know about all that stuff. Like, I was surprised, like my kids had like they know Hogan's a wrestler and that's it. Like they didn't know any of that stuff. I mentioned it and then they're like, ooh, you know, like and they're like, my oldest is like 34. I would have thought for sure he would know, and he didn't know. And then my younger ones, like I remember I posted in the Discord, my daughter sent me a thing, condolences on your loss, whatever, on Thursday. And I'm like, Hogan? It's like, I didn't even like him.
That was an interesting one because
Yeah.
people were reaching out to me in
Mhm.
like a very sad way because they know that I cover wrestling. And I felt bad because I immediately didn't go, "Oh, thank you." Yeah, I'm kind of. I was like, well, if you knew the stuff that he had done, I'm not quite sure if you would have sent that response, but but they were really like thinking about me and my
Mhm.
relationship to Hulk Hogan, and people who really know me knew that, when I was a little kid, I was just a giant Hogan guy all the way up until, my teenage years for sure, because when he became the leader of the NWO and he dropped the leg on Savage, like I was like so fired up. I was like,
Mhm.
this guy is back, because he was struggling, for a little while there as a babyface. So now I want to get your thoughts. Like, here's kind of the real take of this conversation, which is I was hearing from people who were very frustrated that Tony Khan hadn't publicly said anything about Hulk Hogan since he had passed. And they were wondering if AEW was going to do anything about on their show for Hulk Hogan. And then I saw that Tony Schiavone did do a short thing. And Tony Schiavone's the right guy. He worked with
Mhm.
Hogan. Even Jim Ross's time does not cross with Hogan very much. So you wouldn't necessarily have Ross do it. You could have had Sting. Sting would have probably been the best one, but Sting is not on their television all the time. Goldust doesn't really cross over. Dustin Rhodes doesn't cross over with Hogan. So I don't know who else could have done it outside of Tony Schiavone or Sting, but I think that was the right person to do it. And he said, what he said, which was kind of, he was sort of political, probably in the right way, and but he didn't do the Triple H thing on WWE TV, where Hogan was bigger than life and we want to wrap our arms around him and he's our good brother and all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a different take. So I wanted to get your thoughts
Mhm.
on whether or not you thought that was the right tact for AEW to take with the Hulk Hogan news.
Well, if I didn't even know what WWE had done. I haven't watched, like I'm still catching up, and
It
so
was
I
they
didn't I
opened the show with the
yeah.
10 bell salute.
Okay.
Triple H had everybody out on the stage, even the Wyatts in character, which was so goofy. And then he did the whole thing about Hogan was the first sports entertainer, WWE sports entertainer, and X, Y, and Z. And
Mhm.
then they played this like 3 to 5 minute video with Real American, and they tried to encapsulate his career highlights in this one video. I always have a problem when Triple H is the guy, because I just find him so disingenuous. And I'm like, okay, Triple H, like when Hogan beat you for the title in 2002, how much of a fan were you really of this dude? But anyways, he's the guy. He's their chosen
Yeah,
guy to do
the
this
only other
stuff.
guy would be Undertaker.
Yeah, and I don't
Shawn
want
Mike
him to do it either.
No, and Shawn Michaels could, but that would be as bad as Triple
That would
H
be
for the same
bad.
reason. Yeah.
And
So I
you have Dwayne, but you don't
yeah.
really have Dwayne, because Dwayne would do it in the biggest way possible. It would also be a little bit disingenuous. Dwayne's run didn't really cross over that much either. But so, anyways, that was
Yeah.
how WWE did it, and AEW did it their way. What was your thoughts on how they did it?
Well, that's what I would have expected from WWE. You know, and there's not much else you could do. You could make a case for not doing anything, you know, based on the comments and everything, and how his appearance went over the last time he was on TV. As far as AEW, like I was actually pleasantly surprised with what they did. Um, and pleasantly is the wrong word to put it, because like I said, I didn't really care. I didn't expect anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I was surprised that they went as positively as they did and put him over as much as they did. to the point where I was almost wondering if it might have been like a TNT/WBD, like saying, "Hey, this guy was important. You got to mention him," because they over and over again mentioned the network and how he put WCW and the Monday Night Wars on the map and all that. So it wasn't so much even about Tony's personal relationship or lack thereof with Hogan. It was more about his importance to the wrestling industry and specifically to pro wrestling on TNT.
Yeah.
Because he could have even mentioned, his history in New Japan, which they're partners with. And he's got a long history in New Japan and was very important to the creation of the IWGP title, as Jeremy and Steve mentioned on their show on Thursday. So, they could have done that and they didn't. And they didn't need to, and I didn't expect it. They almost Tony Schiavone could have just said, our condolences go to the family and friends of Hulk Hogan. Rest in peace, brother. Like that could have been it. And that would have been fine. And they would deserve no criticism. So as far as I'm concerned, like going as far as they did, you could criticize them if you want for being too positive. But if you're on the other side saying they should have done more, I think that's ridiculous.
They don't have the video outside of if they could have licensed some from New Japan. So they don't have any video on him. He had nothing to do with their show. He leans differently politically than the majority of their audience does. So I'm completely fine with the way that they did it. And
I have a question for you, Garrett.
Yep.
The negative reaction that Hogan got on the Netflix premiere, I don't know if we've ever even talked about this much. Do you think it had more to do with him being racist or with him being so pro-Trump?
Probably being more about him being so pro-Trump.
That's what I think too.
Than him being racist. But I do think fans are very what would you even call it? Fans can be lemmings sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And you remember at WrestleMania 37 when they were out of the pandemic and he and Titus O'Neil were hosting WrestleMania.
Yeah.
He got booed. It was almost even before that, there was a part of the fan base, and the wrestlers included, where they would just kind of make fun of him a little bit. You remember The Rock in Austin at WrestleMania 30 when he was getting names wrong and stuff, and they were kind of along with the joke.
The Superdome.
So Hogan as a pro wrestling character has not been cool in quite some time. And so he was kind of like the cartoon character that you would kind of just make fun of. And then when it comes out in the Gawker stuff that he made these comments, and when he made those comments, I think he was like right at the tail end of his last WWE run. So this is all through TNA and when this stuff had already previously happened. So so that stuff existed. And then, by the time that it comes out that those comments were made on video and there's proof, then yeah, dude, like he's like kind of persona non grata to a large amount of the audience. Now, there are some people, I've seen them online, I've seen them on Instagram, if you want to take away this man's legacy, F you, this and that. And so that's why I told Dave, I think I said it on Dave, where two things can be equally true. A, he was a giant superstar and you can't take that away from him. And B, he was probably a really bad person based on our morals, and you also can't take that away from him. So both things can be true, but that takes nuance to think of it that way, and a lot of fans don't want to think of it that way.
No, and I mean, and this is like a precursor for what happens when Vince passes. Like, how are they going to handle that? And
I think it's going to be worse because he doesn't have as many fans.
So I think. I feel like if Vince showed up in WWE today, he would get a massive ovation. I don't know.
He would get an ovation from the live crowd.
Yeah. No, yeah. So, and online, they'd just be slaughtering him.
The audience worldwide would be very negative on that.
Yeah. But it's just like those fans just love him. And
they would also see it as a moment, right? They would also see it as, oh my God, I never thought I would see this ever again.
True. And if like Janelle Grant showed up on WWE TV, she'd probably be booed. Which is like so unfair. And if she showed up in AEW TV, she'd get a massive ovation. Like,
I don't know if anybody would really know what she looks like.
Well, no, I don't even know what she looks like, to be honest with you. But I mean, if she had the graphic and and I think enough people would know who she was that it would be like, oh man, you took Vince away. Meanwhile, I'm like, hey, it's the best thing that ever happened to WWE, like in terms of like creative. Forget about the fact that he was a bad man. But yeah, so yeah, it's very complicated and a lot of mixed emotions and obviously a very sad day for the wrestling industry. I don't even know what's the right way to put it, but a monumental day in wrestling, with him passing. And it just kind of, it's a part of your childhood. It's gone.
Yeah. All right. We have a little bit of a shorter out today just because of our schedules are concerned. So let's try to get the next two in and let's maybe be a little bit more concise. So one that you had talked about that you wanted to raise was just this idea of content. And you were gone, so I can't even imagine trying to keep up with everything after being on vacation. Like that sounds maddening. But I think we have a little bit of a difference of opinion on kind of who's to blame and the reason for all the content and the competition and all of this stuff. But why don't you state your case really quickly and then I'll go.
As far as who's to blame, I don't even really put a blame on either side. I think it's just there's too much content right now to keep up with, whether you want to blame AEW or WWE or both. And I think it's a combination of both. I mean, naturally, WWE started the fight. And so you can blame them if you want, but then AEW went overboard on their all in because they could and they should. And I don't blame them. That's what they should have done. Like, it's not like I'm mad at them for what they did. It's just as a fan, it's too hard to keep up with. And then when you add in, like New Japan's running the G1 right now, and TNA is like had their biggest show in probably a decade, if not ever, and which I just watched yesterday. Like, this is how hard it is for me to keep up with all this stuff and the weekly TV. Like, I haven't watched any WWE like in like over a week. Like, I haven't watched last week's Raw yet. AEW is a little bit easier to watch because it's on regular TV. But when they start throwing extra stuff at you, and then like and this is kind of even what made me think about it. I heard about Mercedes going for like a title in some promotion, and it's on YouTube. It's free. Anybody could watch it. It's like, I don't have time. Yeah. I would love to have time to watch this stuff. And I think it's important. Like, it's cool. She's winning all these belts. It's awesome. But I'm not going to be able to see it. And no normal person is going to be able to see it because you prioritize everything. And it kind of sucks. And I'm not even like, and what I'm worried about is that with all this content, what's going to start happening is people are going to have to make choices. And I don't know what I'm going to choose. But if I do choose one over the other, then it means there's going to be a lot of wrestling out there that I really like that I'm not going to be able to watch. And that sucks.
That's it. So now let me adjust the conversation slightly here. And let's do a little bit of compare and contrast. WWE has two shows on Saturday, one show on Saturday, one show on Sunday. They're probably going to be around 3.5 to 4 hours long each. SummerSlam. Which do you prefer? Would you prefer one long AEW show that you only have to really give up one evening for, or maybe one afternoon? Or would you prefer the WWE model of two shows and trying to find a way to bucket out 4 hours each day for those shows?
For the way that I watch the shows, I would, if All In had been two shows, it would have been so much better for me personally. I'm not necessarily saying that's what they should do, but for me, that's what I would prefer as a fan. As long as you didn't all of a sudden say, "Oh, we can go 5 hours on," like, and all of a sudden now you got 10 hours. But if it was like the same length but split up on 2 days, because honestly, that's how I watched it. Like, it actually took me 4 days to watch the show, between the pre-show and everything else. Like, I did watch the pre-show, not the talking, but I wanted to see the matches. And so yeah, it took me 4 days. The last two matches was 1 day of watching. That was like an hour and a half. Those last two matches, like that's like almost as much wrestling as will be on one of the days of SummerSlam was just in those last two matches.
I would say now All In was a little bit different. It's because they were playing the game, of course, of trying to go up against Saturday Night's Main Event. And I know Dave's like, "Oh, I knew they were going to do that," and it's fair. And I'm like, "No, it's not. Don't say that that was the right thing because you possibly ruined your own show by doing that, and you don't want to take away anything from this big giant show that you did. So I didn't agree with that. However, on a normal AEW pay-per-view, now maybe I don't agree with this for Wrestle Dream or what's the last show of the year, World's End.
Dynasty.
But for an all in, if we think of All In and maybe Revolution and maybe Double or Nothing as their three biggest shows, I don't even know what they would consider their three biggest shows. But if you go 4.5, 5 hours because you are putting everything into making these shows great, I'm completely okay with that because stuff happens. The problem to me with the WWE shows is 2 days means for them, they get to add double the fluff, which is where you say you can fast forward. And when I say I'm mostly watching live and I'm like, okay, like now we're just sitting on our hands for a little while.
If I was watching live, my answer would be completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and look, neither is perfect. I would love 3.5 hour pay-per-views and just be done with it every single time. But that's just because I am kind of over the spectacle of, oh, this stuff is special. It's not really that special to me anymore because we get too much of it. It can't be special if you get it all the time. All right, let's end this last one here. And we'll probably be able to have a longer conversation. And you and Jeff are probably having this conversation, which is the idea. And I've had many people come to me and tell me this, which is All In, their big show. They get a lot of coverage. They get a lot of momentum. And then they lead into 2 weeks of television. And it seems like they are right back to where they were before they had All In. And my question is, it's not really about these last 2 weeks of shows. It is, can they be as big as they were in today's television ecosystem?
I don't think they can, but it's so hard to, without knowing how many people are watching on Max. And
now, can I caveat that?
Sure.
I think the people watching on Max, while they are younger, and that is a benefit, I think it's all appointment viewing TV. There's no one watching on Max who is like, oh, I'm interested in giving this new thing a try. It's all the fans who always watch are watching.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think you and I both feel the same. I don't think it's as many people as some people think it is. I think
I've always been told, that streaming is more than likely less than people believe.
Right, because I mean, even if you look at, and it's funny because I was just listening to when they were doing the TV, I was listening to you and Dave actually, and you were talking about how David originally reported the numbers that they were negotiating in the TV deal. It was like 150.
Yep.
But that didn't include streaming.
Yep.
And then they ended up being 185. So if you think about it, that 35 is probably the streaming,
right?
Which kind of tells you that they feel that streaming is maybe like 20% of what
because
the TV
they don't get
is.
they don't get the same money yet because the majority of their money comes from their cable division.
Because the majority of the people are still watching on cable.
Well, the majority of it's more the households and the fees that they get as being a part of that cable bundle. Like that's more what it is when it comes to the economics. But at some point, if streaming does become where all the revenue comes from, then it just has to get way bigger than it is, and there has to be more ways for growth and for people to find this stuff, which I don't think is happening. I think I think everyone who's watching on Max is already an AEW fan, but they just they are able to watch it on Max where they may not have been able to watch it on cable.
Yes,
there's no growth.
The only way to get new people is through TV right now, and so that if there's increases in the television numbers, then that's real growth. If there's increases in the ticket sales, then that's real growth. I thought it was a big mistake. And I will say, I thought this 2 months ago when it was announced, or 3 months, whenever it was. Now I may change my mind in a month or so based on whatever happens, but I thought it was a mistake to go from All In, where you're going to have, whatever the number is going to be. It turns out it was like 28,000 to go back to 1,100 for 6 straight shows. Like, And yeah, when you first turned on Wednesday on Dynamite after All In, it kind of looked cool, sounded cool. By the second show, I was done with it, and we still have 4 more to go. Now, I think this next week's show is going to be awesome because you got the Hangman Mox match, and
Yep.
you got Outrunners Bucks, which will probably be great, and then you got Kyle Fletcher and Dustin Rhodes on Thursday, so that should be good too. But I do think, like, we'll see, like, if the ticket sales are increasing. I mean, they're gonna have a good crowd at Forbidden Door.
Yep.
Toronto All Out is looking good, but again, those are numbers that, those numbers were always gonna be good.
Yeah,
So
they can sell pay-per-view for the
they
majority
can.
for the
Yeah.
majority. Those fans know that those are where Tony's going to put his
Right.
money and where his mouth is.
It's
Now
Dynamite in San Jose. It's
right.
it's,
It's that stuff.
Wichita,
So
Seattle. Yeah.
here was my last point, and we'll get out of here.
Sure.
This is my main takeaway. What I wanted to get out about the AEW thing. More so, the reason I think why they're gonna probably be, up and down within a couple of percent, 5%, is because while I think Tony Khan is a really good booker for his audience, John LaRocca may disagree with me. I don't think he's a great promoter for week to week, month to month. I think he's a great promoter for when he believes he needs to sell out big shows. I think he's going to put all of his effort, and we see that with All In. Like, this dude, I imagine this dude was so exhausted from putting all of that effort into that show. And then, sometimes we see it in the TV, the consecutive weeks in the next couple of TVs. I thought both Dynamites were kind of flat coming out of that big show. But in order to be where WWE is, which that's a mountain that is probably too high to climb, you have to be multitasking weekly and being in and out and up and down and not necessarily just focused on booking. That's why there are 2 jobs, right? Triple H and Nick Khan and other people working with them to help them put everything on a schedule and everything in order. And even sometimes, as we saw, All In weekend for WWE, that was a clusterfuck and a half. Like, it was not good. It was probably a negative for their business overall. When it comes to, like, just, was that good? No. Do I want to see more of that? No. So, okay, we'll give them another shot with SummerSlam. SummerSlam has to be good, I think, or there's going to be some overexposure problems. But the one thing that they are good at is they have their calendar. They are able to multitask. They are able to adjust and pivot. And I don't think Tony Khan can do that as a one-man and a bunch of junior people who he doesn't really trust to run the show helping him. And that is, I think, ultimately going to be the reason why AEW won't be able to grow as much. But to that hardcore viewership, I think they're in love with the product. And if you are looking at it from that perspective, you have a base, you're good with your base. I think they're going to be happy with it for as long as it's, still good wrestling. So,
yeah, I think his strength is promoting AEW as a brand, and the style of wrestling that he promotes and everything, and obviously the big shows. But in terms of the week to week promotion, I don't think he thinks that it's that important. That he's got a base audience, and whether it's 700,000, 600, 550, 0.15, 0.20, it doesn't really matter week to week. It's all about the consistency and then the big shows.
And you can always say, hey, we have this DVR audience that watches the next day too. That doesn't even count in the ratings, but we count them because they are
and
customers.
500,000 people watching every week on Max.
Yeah. So
no, I don't think he believes that, but no, and so when it comes to these big shows, it's he's giving everybody exactly what he thinks they want, and a lot of them do want. A lot of them probably would be happy with maybe an hour less of a show, but whatever. Like, they're still buying them, so and I think All In did very well. I haven't really read up on it, but it feels.
I think they did
175, 180.
Yeah, their best buy rate since the Sting retirement.
Well, there you go. So very good. I mean, WWE didn't work, and hopefully they learn from that and stop doing it.
Yeah, right. All right, you and Jeff got a big Dynamite show coming with the big main event of Moxley and Hangman. Nobody can run in. Is that the stip?
That's the stip, and I told Jeff, like, he's like, oh, somebody's going to debut. Well, no, if Tony says nobody's going to run in, nobody's going to run in. I mean, I don't know why he doesn't say that for every match, but he said it for this one. And he's got enough faith with me that I believe it. So yeah, I'm very interested. I mean, I assume Hangman's going to win. I guess the question is what's next for the Death Riders, and I guess we'll find out. Probably that'll move along, and then what's next for Hangman? I expect we'll know Hangman's next challenger after this match happens. That's my guess.
All right, so right after Dynamite, about 20 minutes, or actually with the long overruns, even less these days. You guys are
we tend to try to go for that 20 minutes after the hour, regardless of how long the overrun goes. So we'll see.
That'll be up on our live YouTube stream, and then we'll have the audio in the podcast feed as well. So, all right, thanks, Paul. For Paul, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.